If you pick up two different newspapers today, you might feel like you're reading about two completely different worlds. That's what we're digging into. We're going to look at how the media is painting these conflicting pictures of the conflict in Iran, what's really going on with the political mood in France, and, well, a truly bizarre compliment from North Korea that tells a story all its own. Let's get right into it.
So first up, Iran. Is the world on the verge of a massive economic crisis, or is peace right around the corner? Depending on which paper you read, both could be true. So what is actually going on?
Well, it all starts with the headlines. You're seeing two completely different narratives being pushed out there at the exact same time.
On one side, you have outlets like The Guardian and Le Monde sounding the alarm about an impending oil shock and a rising cost of living. But then on the other side, you have Italy's Corriere della Sera and The Times quoting President Trump, who's claiming the war is, quote, practically finished. It's no wonder everyone's so confused.
So which one is it? To even get close to an answer, a lot of American journalists are saying we need to just ignore the official statements for a second and instead do one simple thing: follow the money.
So let's do that. Let's dig into the financial side of this thing. How much is this all costing? And maybe more importantly, who stands to profit from it? The U.S. media has really been digging into this.
Let's start with this number because, wow. According to the Washington Post, the U.S. spent $5.6 billion on munitions in just the first 2 days of strikes on Iran. That is just an unbelievable amount of money.
Now, the strategy has kind of shifted. The conflict kicked off with these highly advanced, super expensive weapons that cost millions for a single strike. But now to keep the whole thing going, the military is shifting to cheaper options. But let's be really clear, cheaper here still means tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars per strike. This is an incredibly lucrative business.
So, who is making all this money? War is absolutely big business. And as reporters have been finding out, the profits are not just coming from the official government contracts you might think of. Just get this exclusive from the Wall Street Journal. Eric and Donald Trump Jr. are reportedly backing a new drone company. It's called Power Us. And their goal? It's pretty explicit: land Pentagon contracts. The plan is to produce 10,000 drones a month and get a piece of that $1.1 billion budget the Pentagon has for U.S.-made drones. But it isn't just about military contracts. There is a much, much murkier world of profit out there. And to understand this next part, you need to know about something called prediction markets. Okay, so imagine a betting website. But instead of betting on sports, people are gambling on real-world events, like, say, whether or not a military strike is going to happen. And these sites, which are often based on crypto, are highly unregulated. And this is where things get really wild. The New Yorker has been reporting on what looks a lot like insider trading. The theory goes like this: insiders who had classified information about upcoming U.S. strikes went and placed bets on these markets before any of that was public knowledge. And the result? 6 anonymous gamblers made an absolute fortune. And we're not talking about a little bit of cash. Their profit was $1.2 million. And here's the kicker. While this would be classic, illegal insider trading on the stock market, these crypto platforms, they operate in a legal gray area with way fewer regulations. Okay, so while the conflict in Iran is dominating the headlines, it's definitely not the only story reshaping the world right now. Let's zoom out a bit and shift over to Europe, because there's a huge political realignment happening in France just ahead of their municipal elections. Polling from Le Monde is showing this really significant shift in what voters care about. The cost of living and healthcare are still number 1 and 2, no big surprise there. But the big news is that immigration has now shot up into 3rd place, and it's actually pushed the environment out of the top 3. It really signals a rightward shift in the national mood. At the very same time, the French left seems to be, well, in disarray. The newspaper Libération is reporting that one of the major left-wing parties is calling for an anti-fascist front. But, and this is a big but, they're also refusing to cooperate with potential allies like the Socialists and Greens. So the big question is, are they going to end up just defeating each other before the election even really begins? All right, so from complex geopolitics to very strange public statements, for our last story, we're heading to North Korea. The world recently celebrated International Women's Day, and leader Kim Jong-un, he also marked the occasion, just probably not in the way you'd expect. As the Times reported, the praise he offered was unique. For instance, he said that women are And I quote, "Though physically weak, they are obviously strong-willed." Right. I think we can all agree you could probably just leave off that first part.
But oh, it didn't stop there. He went on to say that, quote, "Their plain faces assume courage, and their wrinkles denote their strenuous exertion." There's this strange, repeated focus on plainness and wrinkles as if they're signs of virtue.
In fact, The Times summed up the entire bizarre ceremony with this headline, which just perfectly captures the absurdity of it all. Kim Jong-un praises North Korean women despite their plain faces and wrinkles.
And that really brings us to the end of all this. Whether it's conflicting headlines about a war, or subtle shifts in what voters care about, or a leader's bizarre propaganda, the real story is so rarely just right there on the surface. It just goes to show that money, power, and ideology are always shaping the news we consume. Which leaves us with one last question. What's the real story hiding behind the headlines you'll read tomorrow?